Bueno, hi everybody. Good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon to everybody, all our friends around the world. I'm here with, excuse me, I'm here with Michelle. Michelle is part of my inner circle, let's say. Uh, it always fascinates me with Michelle that she understands at a very organic level the necessity to go inside, to do that journey inside, to find your true self. And and it's like she has a thirst for that. It's kind of like she's, whatever her humanity and whatever she's doing, that we are all, dancing in this pretty reality, she's always kind of searching that. So um, Michelle also has been she's been through the program, the modules, some of the modules, and and I adore having conversations with her. I adore, the interaction. She's very wise and she understands marketing and communication and all of that stuff. So, Michelle, it's so good to be here with you.
So sweet. What a sweet introduction. I appreciate you so much and happy to be here.
Good. So, let me see. I think I'm turning up the volume a little bit just in case, So, this is the first conversation that I do or we do in English. I've done a couple in Spanish, but the first one I do in English, and I'm excited to do it with you because, you understand, the movement of the circle of trust,
Mhm.
and you understand all of that in a way that uh, it's great because every time I call you, I find something, you tell me something that confirms things and all of that. So we were talking about the vessel, the fact that we come to this world, you know and we are just a vessel.
Mhm.
And of course we come from divinity, from the other side. And we come from trust, from love, and from trust. And we land in this three-dimensional planet where the trust is broken apart in so many different ways. So, and it has a lot to do with patriarchy, actually, this whole thing. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, need, because especially today, we came from love and we landed in fear. What are the consequences of that? What are the real consequences of fear? How does it manifest? It manifests in control. It manifests in those five foundations, in separation, in exclusion, in competition.
Right. Division.
in secrecy because they're all together, and it's in scarcity because if you go there, you're going to end up with scarcity compared to going to the opposite, which is unity, inclusion,
Transparency.
cooperation, transparency, and then what you get, abundance. So it's all about trust, right? So the idea of us coming to this dimension and being, like an empty vessel that literally it's filled with, the behaviors of our parents who are actually the ambassadors, the first ones that are going to show you how this world is. And I was talking about, I was thinking about a quote today, actually, that I wrote that says that it is exactly that. It says, I was trying to, I forgot now. Oh my God, it says to eradicate. No, I don't remember now.
It'll come back
It'll
to you.
come, yes. But anyway, so talking about the vessel, right? And how the vessel has, whatever came into my vessel, has impacted who I am in so many different ways. So one of the things that, because we're talking about the 5 foundations, right, is that, believe it or not, it's like either one or the other, either or one or the other set of 5 words, because it's all compound there, whether it is, that it is we are one, we are all together, or it's we are separated and and all of that. So anyway, I wanted to talk about, because I wrote this essay that's called "I'm Just a Vessel," and it was kind of like a return to my childhood. And I wrote it when I was 66 years old, because a group of women invited me to participate in a book that was called Radiantly Senior. And I think I have it somewhere here. But anyway, Radiantly
Beautiful title.
Yeah, it is the book, actually.
I remember.
You see? So it's a compilation of, 5 of 19 women. And this to me was amazing because it was kind of like giving birth to my inner child, like going back to my childhood now that I'm, starting to be a senior, right? So the idea came as, I'm just a vessel. Because in reality, I realized that I was so privileged, I would say, or so lucky that I had a couple, a man and a woman, playing the role of parents in a way that was just perfectly the way it should be, like they were like dancing this parenthood thing, both. And it was like gorgeous to see because they were so united. So there was something there that came from my father's family that had to do with the fact that the child needs the mother the first 6, 7 years of their life. And that's the circle of trust, right? So the thing is that if the mother, the ambassador is the mother, the first person that the child encounters. And if the mother puts the child in the center of the circle from 0 to 6, that child will be able to go back to the circle and give back to the community. So the problem is when the child is not put in the center of the circle. And then what happens? Then, I always say that the only person that deserves to be in the center of the circle, the center of the universe, is the child between 0 and 5 or 6. Because if you don't give it to them, you're going to find 60-year-old people, claiming to get into the center because they missed it. They fall into some, very painful way of being that they have to kind of like restore themselves because they were not modeled that. They don't know how it works, right?
Yeah, I feel like it makes them feel like they're just a shadow, and it contributes to the lack of having a voice, and I think that's very important, giving your children a voice.
Yes,
And I think that reflects a lot as one gets older.
exactly. And even in there's so many different ways that parents do what we do because we're conditioned by our own parents. So going back to the vessel, the idea would be to, this is the phrase I wanted actually. The idea would be to do an inventory of the vessel, because whatever was put in the vessel, and what serves you and what it doesn't, you can take it out of the vessel now. You can do an inventory of what you received in your vessel, kind of thing, if it makes sense. Because the other thing, and this is and hold the thought 1 second, please. The other thing is what I was thinking is exactly what I said before, is that if we can eradicate the frequency, the vibration of the words and frequency of of guilt, blame, and punishment, we are ready to completely transmute our experience into the ultimate knowledge and the expansion of consciousness. Because in reality, is what you said, is so that they have their voice, because if they don't have their voice, they don't have their voice. There's no voice. They're painting on the wall. Right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it affects their adulthood as they get older as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's the thing about the vessel, one thing. And then all of this, lately I've been I was telling you, I've been thinking about my grandmother a lot, because the other thing about the inventory of and the vessel, it's that it's really important to understand that those ancestors, impacted us, put a seal in us, because we learn through modeling, right? Does that make sense, the modeling, to you, Michelle?
Modeling.
That we learn through, like, is what in Spanish we say, we aprendemos del ejemplo.
Mhm,
We learn
100%.
through the model, right?
Yes.
But how did it feel for you when somebody said, you know, instead of modeling, I mean, the thing is that the message we're giving is that we're modeling something so, it's so perverse to model something and then punish your child for what they are picking from your own model.
That's very powerful. Yeah. Mhm.
So that's why we really need to reinvent all of this stuff about parenthood. And the first things to eradicate literally is those things, guilt, blame, and punishment, because those three things are in the way of expressing yourself. Because let's go back to our parents and their parents and their parents, is that everybody is doing the best they can with what they have. So we eradicate all that rubbish about guilt and blame, and let's act like scientists, right? Makes sense. And then we can expand from all of that, because in reality, again, going to what you say about the voice, in matriarchy, what happens is that you're not blamed nor guilted nor punished. You are first encouraged for who you've always been, and then you are asked why, so that you can understand why, without the fear of being hung in the major square of the town, right? So it is imperative to eradicate it in ourselves first, I think. So I'll give you, right?
Yes.
So Michelle,
Mhm.
this entire story about my grandmother, my mother, I've talked about, the main legacies that my mother gave me, and one, I'm going to say it out loud here because it's the most amazing one, is that she showed me that she's no victim.
Mhm.
This woman at 30 years old, only to say that now, was left without her three children, a woman that was a mother all her life, like a mother by choice, by um, conviction, by you know, left without her children, without her husband, who was her best friend, the best co-parent that he could have ever had, who came from matriarchy the same way she came. That's why they could dance this together so well, literally. This is the research I've been doing lately. They both came from matriarchy. You know, grandparents were matriarchs. So, um, so I wanted to understand, you know, how this thing worked, and yes, that, you know, it makes sense when you go through. This is why what I'm doing right now here is the beauty. You can do it. Is we all should be doing it, right? Having these conversations about our ancestors and about all of that stuff, you know, to, you
I
know,
agree, especially because I believe we're also victims of generational traumas. So it's nice to be able to analyze it and discuss further.
it's true.
Mhm.
When you're saying the generational trauma, it's passed on. So we really have kind of, I mean, we really have a, you know, an obligation, you know, to stop it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So the story goes like this. So that's the thing with my mother. The first thing that I learned from her that I'm so grateful, because she was left with nothing, including her best friend, you know, all of it in a huge human tango. Okay. Tango, right? So, and I saw her move on and create a life, a gorgeous life for herself. I never saw her dramatize anything. She focused 100% in the time she had left with us, and the rest was, you know, her new life. In 3 years, she was living in Paris. You know, she fell in love again, you know, and so
How old was she at the time?
maybe 33. She was
Wow,
31.
so young.
Yes. She married at 19. She had me at 90, at 20, maybe. Yeah,
Mine too. My mom also.
really.
1921.
And you and I have that thing in common. It is that we're both the oldest daughters with two younger brothers, which
Yeah.
is a very interesting, you know, it's a combination that Miley has that too. No, Miley is the opposite. She's the youngest. But anyway, the two brother thing and the girl, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the thing about my mother. And there's much more that I've been talking about. Today I want to concentrate in my grandmother, my father's mother. So the other thing about my mother is, and my father, both of them, is that it's like I I arrived at 9 years old to this tangle drama where my parents divorce, separate, and you know, there's involvement. You know, my stepfather mother becomes my mother's best friend. You know, stigma, complicated. But the way, but I had such a good base, you know, that, and I have talked about this in Spanish in other conversations, you know, all I could see was the good things. I didn't have judgment. I didn't have prejudice. I had been asked since I could speak, what did I think? So it was kind of like another experience where things are changing, but it's not all bad because, you know, then you have advantages as a child, right? Now your mom is at 3 blocks from your house, you know, and you go do your homework with her. And there are, you know, Aunt Lila and Uncle Eugene, who are my grandparents and like my grandparents, and this is exciting, even that can be exciting, you know what I mean? So there was no, I think they did it so well in spite of the drama that happened, that there was not that thing, the residue of, that, until my stepmother kind of built it up against my mother, because she was, I think in the end, she was really not in love with my father, but she was envious of my mother. So there's a beautiful story behind all of that, but only with that. So those two things, they see the good in the bad, like instantly. I've always been good at that. It pops up. I see it everywhere, I'm crying on one eye and laughing on the other. But look at this, right? So that prepares you to change those two things, okay? And then there's my grandmother, and that's how this story starts, because it was my grandmother. It was like maybe, I don't know, maybe when Alex was in in LA, maybe 6 years ago. No, maybe 5 years ago, let's say. So he calls me because I'm in San Francisco. And he says, Mama, can you explain to me, please, why I'm seeing the number 17 everywhere? And I'm going, okay. My father was born in the year 1970. My grandmother was born the 17th of January. My father had a condo at the beach where my grandparents had their hotel. That was the number 17. My father was the number 17 from the country club from the Spanish colony in Chile, number 17. My grandmother left her hometown, Lequeitio, which was a port, a fisherman port, to go to Chile at 17 to meet her husband, who she had married by power of attorney, Michelle. Think about that one. Then I go at 17 years old. Then she had 17 grandchildren. I left Chile for the la madre patria, the motherland, at 17. I'm the only one of her 17 grandchildren that went back to the old country.
Wow.
So then I go, I was with your father for 17 years. I was in Spain another 17 years.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. At 17, I left Chile, just like my grandmother, opposite. And Yeah, at 17. And then I stayed 17 years. And then I came to Washington, you know. So I was married with your father for 17 years. I go, it's okay, mom, enough. I got it. You know? But
Wow.
what I realized, that this was kind of like my grandmother sending me a message.
Of course. Yeah, I believe in that. That's how angels send messages. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I do believe that the more you're in touch with, your vibrations and your higher self, the more you notice them and the more it becomes a pattern. Mhm.
Well, we've had some stories with ducks and hawks, by the way, you and I.
Yeah.
Like, talking about the divine interfering, through a hawk or through,
Mhm.
ducks or, yeah, it's
Yes,
so beautiful. Yes.
it
And,
is.
and, and so I've had this question always, because my grandmother went to Chile. And what happened with that is that, you know, she was a goddess in the kitchen from the Basque country, because that's what they do in her little village. The men go to fish at night, and then the women prepare the fish and the seafood. And the best cuisine is the Basque. So what they did is that they were like concessionaries of a sports club where there were swimming pools, tennis courts. And where was grandma? Grandma was in the kitchen cooking, and grandpa was at the bar playing moose with his friends, you know, and and the kids were cleaning the swimming pools when they were out of season. So interestingly enough, they didn't have a house. It was more like a country club. And later they built their own hotel in a little village by a fisherman port, in the Pacific. She ended up there, you know. So, so, um, so my thing is that they had 6 children, and and this thing about the 6 children, I kept thinking, asking my grandma, in the last 3 years it was when I had the accident. Remember the accident I had? That's when it happened. So I'm asking her, you know, what's up with my father? Because, you know, there was kind of a joke in my family that was kind of like the grandpa was kind of, you know, a guy, playing moose. Like my mother didn't like him at all. It's not like she spoke about him all the time. She maybe said it once, but it was enough. you know so so it's really funny because I'm asking, so what is it that makes my father so different than everybody else as a father? you know what? And especially because in this situation he was, as a husband, you know was not complying or not you know, abiding or not. I don't know what to say. As a husband was, he had crossed the line, but as a father, he never did, right? It's a thing about the father, right? So, so he, so why is it that, you know, my mother got, without any of that? Is because my father said that unfortunately, uh, the fact that we were above 7 years old, the three of us, 7, 8, and 10, you know, they started to need the father more, because that's the time when the mother, she says the circle of trust, it's the mother, it's the, the nutrition, right, of the mother. So, it's the mother. And then at 7, my father claimed that he wanted to be the full father then, because my mother had already prepared. He said that if the kids were younger, he would have never done that, because they need the mother until they're 7. Kind of like a rule. I'm finding out that those rules are very common in matriarchy and in native communities. So anyway, that was one of the first things, and I wanted to share this now because it is, let me see, share screen, because I wrote these rules, and here it is. Can you see it? We can see it, right?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute, but yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So here it is. So it is parents' treatment regarding children, o sea, rules for children treatment. And I think this is like something that we really need to follow, because it's really important. That's kind of the thing
Definitely adopting all of these when I become a parent.
I love it. So tell me about it a little bit. So we know about the mother, right? The first one is the mother, the 0 to 6. Then the father and mother must be united for the common good of the children, including divorce. Well, that's really important, right?
Absolutely.
And then you have children are not to be separated under any circumstances, because there were talks with us that, that maybe I would go with my mom and the boys go with their dad. And he says, by no means, that never can be happening unless there is no other way, but that's another rule. And this is the best one, is the battles of adults are not to be fought in the minds of children.
Wow.
One thing is that the children are entitled, when they see things, you cannot tell them that that they don't see them, but they are entitled to know, but not in terms of being a battle, because now you start to dissociate your children in two, and it's a horrible thing to do to the soul.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, many
I
people
think it's
do.
definitely part of the responsibility if you want to become a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You're so right. Because, I have friends, I have, Sharon, my friend, that, they were great parents together, amazing, but they were having battles as husband and wife. And what they did is that, the kids are in bed, and then now they are in the kitchen, they look at each other and go, let's go to the car. And they yell at each other at the car. Right?
I love that. Yeah.
I love it. It makes so much sense. She's one of the best mothers I know. So then it is, um, no differences are to be made between children, for God's sake. When you make difference with a child, you're planting the seeds of war in your family. And the sixth one that has 100% to do with that one, you don't label a child to be the good one and the other one the bad one, or the other one the invisible, or the other one the untouchable. You don't do that, period. You don't, right? So, right? Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
So then, going back to the story, grandma, I say, why is it that my father is so brilliant? Because all of that stuff is brilliant. And he was like very serious about this, to walk his talk.
Mhm.
So, so then I asked my grandma, and she says, well, darling, you know, we had the first son, who was your uncle Julius, you know, he was excited because he was a boy. It's perfect. He put him in the bar, you know, he became an alcoholic. Then the second one was the first girl. Imagine, she was the prettiest thing, and then she didn't marry somebody from the colony, but she married somebody that was amazing. She had two girls. It was perfect, perfect girl. And then the third one is Uncle Lucho, who is the one that the grandpa invites, to become his partner in the business. And it's the best choice because he's the one that brings the business to what it is today, that, it's an amazing operation of 6 months that gives a great living to 6 families, So still, with people coming to eat my grandmother's paella on Sundays, you know, it's not a hotel anymore. So anyway, so she says, so your grandpa was totally happy with the first three, totally happy. So by the time Peter came, who's my father, it was like Pedro, he loved him, but from afar, but he never took him to the bar or, he grew up in the kitchen with mama cooking and all the waitresses, and at the same time with all the, you know, the the girls that were, cleaning, and like all women, right? It's not only grandma, it's grandma, not only your mother is, you know, it's like your mother is doing this, you know. So that's what happened. And So she says he didn't pay attention. And then the other thing that you know, she was Mother Earth, this woman, she made food like an alchemist, you know, and she breastfed her children, and they tell me this is another thing. And we were talking about that, is that, he would be breastfed until he was 4 years old. And he would climb on mother's lap, open the thing and go, you know.
It's interesting. My dad was the same exact way with my grandmother
See,
until he was about
is
4 or
this
5.
right?
Mhm. So interesting.
I love that. So, then I learned about this tribe in Ghana that they've been studying, that apparently it's the tribe that's the most cooperative tribe in the world. And it is this tribe happens that the the distinctive thing about the mothers in the tribe is that they grew a way to get the baby hanging from the teat and work with the other arm. And they never let the baby go from the teat until it's 6 years old, right? Until it can be away from the teat, right? From that nurturing from, your mother. That's seeing you and believing in you, even though she's damaged and bleeding inside, but she's seeing you and believing in you. And that's, you had that, right?
Sorry, my back there's a little bit of background noise because my parents are watching TV. That's
Oh,
why
oh, I
I'm
see. Don't worry
moving stuff
about it.
on and off.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think everybody that was put in the center, even with, all of the other stuff that happens that is difficult here because of patriarchy, because of this stuff. If you were put in the center, that's what I said, you were put in the center with both of your parents, no doubt, right?
Yes.
They say that the character of the child is defined at 5 years old. Think about
Mhm.
that. Think
Mhm.
if the teeth is not important,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Mm. So, that's kind of the story about my grandmother that I wanted to share. And yet, and because here's the other part that's interesting also, is that she is the Christ in my family. You know that you always have the person that's the Christ. It could be the black sheep too, but in her cases, she was just, you know, no glamour, you know, you know, I saw her dressed in black, gray, and white all my life because her husband had died, with a bun here, like nothing, like plain, 100% plain mother force, human, and we all, I mean, I remember that, there was a time that she would come to the children's houses and stayed there for a while. And the kids were like, all of them, like my father and his siblings were all like, oh my God, you know, you've had her for too long. We want her here. She
That's
could like,
sweet.
ah,
How sweet.
yeah, yeah. Her name was Jesusa, by the way.
Wow. Does she have a middle name?
No, her name was Jesusa.
I love it.
And the interesting part is that she represented Jesus, but
Mhm.
she prayed on the, my father would pray anywhere. It's kind of that those people that don't need the church, you know. And she came from a matriarch, from her father, who was another matriarch. So that's why, interestingly enough, in this family of six, you had two bubbles: patriarchy, where is one girl and three boys, and matriarchy, where is one boy and three girls here. The younger sisters of my father. My father had,
Wow,
because
I
he was
didn't
the
realize
fourth
that.
one. He was the fourth one. So, after the three that I said, that the perfect ones for grandpa, then it was him and two. Okay, Peter, Angela, and Maria. And my grandmother was Jesusa. And my father was kind of like, I'm the Madeleine. You know, it's the thing about the reverse, right? That the mother is a thing of the reverse with the father, with my father being a boy, the boy, the boy that he's matriarch, that is raised with his understanding of matriarchy.
That's very important. I was just gonna say I just realized something because that's the way that my dad is, and then my grandmother, his mother is as you are describing yours, just very giving, more of a mother. She puts herself more from a mother's point of view before a
A
woman,
woman,
if that makes
exactly,
sense.
exactly.
And then she also grew up with like three brothers, and she was the oldest. So it's interesting to see how those dynamics play out.
Fascinating, right?
Mhm.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So the next conversation, Michelle, this was kind of introductory about that, but I want to debate with you, judgment, and tell the story about judgment, because that's one of the things that it's, along with guilt, blame, and punishment, we have to eliminate the judgment from our thinking, because it, well, we're going to talk about that. Give it some thought. I had I have actually a recording about this.
I love it. Okay.
Did I send you the recordings? No,
I
no.
believe you did.
Oh, okay.
I'll check and then
Yeah.
I'll we can
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, so you know, um, thank you for being here, and
thank you for sharing. Every time I talk to you, I always learn something. There's always the most amazing takeaways from any conversation we have.
it's the
Always
same way.
appreciate
Yes, it's a pleasure with you all the time. And what I enjoy that much so much is that you had that vision, you had the marketing vision. And every time I always consult, this. I have my committee, my
Mhm.
my team. But every time I consult something with you, you're totally getting the vision of the whole thing. It's like
I connect to your thoughts, definitely. That's how it feels for me.
it's fascinating. I love
It
it.
is fascinating.
Yes, yes.
The ultimate human experience, I would say.
I love it. Thank you so much, darling, for being
Thank
you.
you.
So we're going to say goodbye now. Is there
Okay,
anything
until
you
next
want to
time.
comment?
Ooh. Let's see. I did have a few questions,
Mhm.
but hopefully they'll come back to me.
That's
I think
fine.
also I was so engaged,
Yes,
in everything you
yes.
were saying
I
that I
think
didn't think of. And you also explained it very well, so
yeah, it makes sense, right?
it makes
Because it's
sense.
like
Yeah.
after a while, it's like when you're creating the thing, you have to repeat it enough. We learn through repetition and we unlearn through repetition. Let's not forget that. The most important one. So it's not a drama. All you have to do is repeat to your brain enough until it incorporates it as a habit and a reality and a behavior and a thinking
Mhm.
process. So those are the things that are really important. The judgment, for instance, and the modeling, and what was the other one? The one that I just said.
Repetition? No.
Mhm, repetition. And here's one of the very, very interesting things that my father did. It's that we're teenagers. This happened all the time when we were, you know, whatever we were doing, children, preteens. But when I distinctly remember when we were teenagers, he goes in Spanish, he goes, um, initiative, constancy of constant, not perseverance, constancy, because perseverance has a judgment denotation, right? So it was in um, when you take initiative, constancy, and responsibility. And she's passing by. We are with the gang because we have a gang in the neighborhood. And he's passing by and he goes, iniciativa, constancia y responsabilidad. Y jaja, y se va. Repeat, repeat, repeat.
I love it. Good words to live by.
Excellent. Yes. Okay, mi amor. Big, big hug. Thank you so
For you
much
too.
for being part of this. And yes,
Of
this
course.
is the
Thank
beginning.
you.
Yes.
I'll talk to
Take
you soon.
care. Mwah. So
Bye.
I love you so much. Where is end? No, I have to end the recording.